It may have been, but it wasn't in the community that I lived in. Or if it was, as a small child, I never heard that word till I came to Fort Wayne. And I wasn't around the people that was using it. But even when we would get together for association, or we would have picnics, we call them associations, when different families of that community would play ball together and things like that, they never argued and called each other names like that. You might have a dispute, but whatever it was, that word was never used. I never heard it. Oh, as far as fun goes, in school, you know, had different games that you played. You would have foot races, you know, and you would have hide and go seek. We would shoot marbles, you know, and as a child in the South, I think at a younger age, you grow up faster. You do things. You had horses and various livestock, and you would bet a kid that your horse could outrun his, or things of that nature. You'd have horse races, you know, and foot races and things of that nature, games, and we played baseball, things like that. Well, when I came to Fort Wayne over at Harmer, we would have gym classes, you know, physical ed. And during those classes, we had a coach over there, Mr. Barley, Pete Barley, and we had foot races, you know, and we had a track team over there. And he would basically put boys, you know, of the same, close to the same size, and you run like 50 yards, things like that, and that's how I kind of got introduced to athletics over there at Harmer Grade School. Well, as you know, Harmer was predominantly black, so it was guys like Darnell Hollins, John Kelso, George Milton, Eddie Russell, Grant West, you know, various black, you know, later on became athletes at Central. All of those guys were over there, so we ran against each other. And between Harmer and James H. Smart, which was on the other side of the tracks, which was over here around, you know, Weiser Park and John Street and things of that nature, they became the major force as far as the grade school when it got into the tournament winners, basically between Harmer and James H. Smart, because they were the predominantly black schools. And there was a white school that was pretty good, and that was, well, Forest Park. Yeah, Forest Park. But the other schools like Adams, Studi, and, you know, the other schools, Franklin, there wasn't any competition, you know, basically between the two black schools, Harmer and James H. Smart. Oh, they had Frank Smith, I believe there was Earl Coker. A lot of the guys back then that was across the tracks, you know, and I lived on this side, which was over on Lewis, around that area on Eliza Street. And it really wasn't games like games are now, but, you know, you didn't affiliate too much with the guys from across the track. The only time I would know them is when at a track meet or something like that, I would see them, and then I might hear their name. But as far as really know them or friends and things like that, you know, wasn't friends with them. That's the names. And Frank Smith was pretty fast. But we all came together when we went to Central. We all, yeah, after we, you know, got out of grade school and went to Central. Well, actually, that's really how I got my recognition. I wasn't a sprinter, you know. I was a skinny kid, you know, and you know, George Milton, Kelso, John Kelso, and Frank Smith, Darnell Hollins, Eddie Russell, all of those guys were faster than me, you know, in the 100 and the 200 meters. I weighed maybe 118 pounds when I was 14 years old, you know, and George Milton, he was muscular, you know, and I was a skinny kid, so in physical, when we had our gym classes at Central, well, we had farther distance to run than we did over at Harmon, you know, in the quarter mile, the half mile, the mile, and even cross country, 2 miles. And that's when I found out that after a quarter of a mile, those guys that could outrun me in the 100 and 200, you know, I could kind of hold my own from a quarter mile on up. And that's when I, you know, kind of become a standout because I was outrunning those guys. At Central first, you know, half mile and a miler. I was Central miler. And back then, no black kids run distance. They were basically sprinters. And if you wasn't a good sprinter, you basically wasn't on the team, you know. But I become kind of a standout. And I learned later on that I guess in my heritage and my mother's side is quite a bit of Indian, you know, so I guess that contributed to my genetics. See, so when I become a standout at Central, I was out running the white guys, you know. I worked after school, but as far as just going out on my own and practicing, didn't do it. We had hard practices at school, you know. We would run from like Lewis Street down to Rudisill and over to, we run down Clinton to Rudisill and over to Lafayette and back down, you know. So we had pretty extensive practices at school. Well, I would really say probably my coach and the places I was starting to get the recognition as being, you know, when I come in first place. Same way with the drug situation, you know, drinking, smoking back then. You know, they were doing that then. I didn't drink or smoke, but everybody was doing it. Would have a cigarette or two. As you know, if you run distance, you know, you need lung capacity to do that. And, you know, you wasn't cool if you didn't have a pack of cigarettes roll up in your sleeve or something in a short sleeve shirt. So I would, you know, take a puff off a cigarette or two, and if I had a race the next day, didn't have the win. I noticed that, you know, and didn't get first. You know, so I found out there was more recognition and things and notoriety if I won the race. So that kind of deterred me from the smoking, the alcohol, and things of that nature.